All right, almost right on time. So, hi everyone. Thanks for joining. This is our last session of 2021 already. Many things have happened. Yeah, I'm just super happy to have everybody join us today for this session. We'll cover a little journey of CI/CD on GCP. So around like code source repository, cloud build, and cloud deploy. So we'll have David Sanders. Hi, David. Join us and actually get you some real demo, which is what really people want to see. Well, as we always do, and good job, Stacy, for not changing the month at the top of the slides. I had one job, failed. I'll meet you speaker quickly. There's a few things about like asking questions during the event, so we'll just cover that quickly. GCP news segment that we do, just covering some of the cool blog posts that were post out there since the last event. Kind of sum them up quickly, give you the links, which is so that way you can actually go and look them up for yourself. And then we'll have our main session around CI/CD with our friend David, and then we'll wrap up the event. The idea is to stick within the hour. We may go over like maybe like 5 minutes, depending on how the Q&A goes. So that's basically how this thing is gonna run. So again, like two jobs, Stacey, had to change an 11 for 12, and you failed. So your today's speakers, Stacey Verano, I'm a pre-sales cloud engineer at SADA, one of the co-orgs for GDG Cloud Montreal. And with me today, I'll have David Sanders, cloud customer engineer extraordinaire at Google, who will cover the CI/CD piece. I will let David intro himself when we're at this section, so we can just go through our little news. TLDR and asking questions during the event is pretty straightforward. If you look to your right in the Bevy interface, you'll see chat attendees, stuff like that. If you're in chat, you have general, QA, and DMs. So general is where I said I, JF said I, and other people said I. Then there's a QA section where actually, I pasted one of the question that Milad had regarding triggers and cloud build that maybe David can address while we're in the QA section. David says yes. So Milad, you'll have your question answered. So please use the question section, so the Q&A. I know people will moderate this thread also. So when we're at the QA part, then we'll be able to cover everything for you. So that's the TLDR around Q&As. All right. So just gonna go quickly around our cool posts worthy of sharing, and the first one is, of course, our friend Log4j. Uh, so basically, well, we know what happened around. So of course, following a threat like this, there's always official response or things you should have done. Or things you should do to avoid this in the future, or to get visibility. So in previous meetups, I talk about the GCAT team, which is the Google Cybersecurity Action Team. And of course, they come up with recommendation. Of course, update to 2.16 ASAP. If you're using Log4j, not 2.15, which was like, oops, we forgot something. 2.16. Regarding what's going on in Google itself, I mean, Cloud Armor, the WAF, as detection and blocking rules that can actually now be implemented. Cloud IDS has been GA, I think, like maybe 2 weeks ago or something. Now as a signature update also. So on the intrusion detection part, you have something there that's running. If we go on with the bigger guns, so you have Chronicle, who's basically threat hunting. So that's something that can give you, if you want to do forensic, that's perfect to that's the perfect tool to actually do that. And if you're leveraging stuff like Security Command Center Premium, well, you have event and container threat detection, so you can leverage that also to see what's going on for our friend Log4j. And of course, well, I put the little meme about the toaster, but I had the same thing going on in my head. It's like, hey, well, if I have a smart car, is the dashboard has log4j somewhere, and then can somebody do crypto mining with my car while I'm driving? I'm just gonna leave that there, and that way you won't be able to sleep if you have a smart car. So go to the next one. So the other one is basically I like that one. It's the same simple things, but it's how to create safeguard your admin accounts. You'll see that all those just as a little segue, all those news, they don't have links, but I'll paste all the links to all of those in the chat directly, so that way you can reference the article themselves. So don't worry, it's not just like bullet points and that's it. You'll have something you can actually go and read in details. So there was an article about the creating safeguard around admin accounts. So it's always you know, there's a principle of least privilege when when it comes to cloud. It's not just a GCP thing, it's just best practices. So making sure that people like, hey, well, Stacy at evilcorp.com doesn't have an admin account role. Maybe Stacy needs to be an admin, and maybe Stacy should have a separate account, which is like a break glass account that I can leverage only when I need to do admin task. And well, if I'm not the only admin, maybe put all those admins together in a group, apply the IAM roles to the group, and keep things simple. You want to deal with groups. You don't want to deal with people. So that's the best way to safeguard your admin accounts. Make sure that who can do what, keeping things granular, keeping things together, and properly identified. So there will be more details on the article itself, but that's just like a big sum up of that post. I've mentioned security command center. There's the findings that are now, a feature that's been turned on in SCC, which basically has 3 states like muted, unmuted, and undefined. Again, with kind of best practices, like I've been doing ops for like forever, and during my operation time, one thing is that if you keep getting alerts for the same thing, at one point you keep ignoring them. So being able to mute and put a reason in the SCC findings that, yes, we know there's an issue with X, but please, stop bugging us with this. We'll fix it. That's great. So you're able to mute this. You're also able to put mute rules on those findings, which is great. And of course you can unmute those, and you have the findings that are undefined. It's like, hey, well, nothing happened with this, but be aware that you never looked at this little finding in SCC. So nice little feature there. Again, in the realm of security and visibility, that's a great little addition to Security Command Center. So in regards to, well, again, visibility of what's going on out there, Cloud Asset Inventory is now GA. So basically, well, that's what it is, right? It's just an asset inventory. So everything that you got on GCP running, created, deleted, is something that can be kept for 5 weeks, all the metadata. So well, 5 weeks is nice, but what about maybe if I have I need to show breadcrumbs and trails of everything that happened in the last 6 months. That's the rules of Enterprise X. What do I do with that? So how do I do that? So, well, that's simple. There's actually now like the possibility with asset inventory being GA to export stuff like GCS, like you put stuff in a bucket, or BQ and then just go crazy and then create dashboards of how many compute and giving trends and everything. So you just you can do whatever you want with Data Studio consuming BQ data. So that's something that's there to actually give you more than 5 weeks of history on your metadata. So keep an eye out and have a look. It's actually a pretty interesting and useful feature. Now I don't know if Archie is there, our friend from Google and CNCF and X, Rentis with me. We're gonna go back in time in our OpenStack days, and basically, which is just cool. OpenStack has grown in usage, especially with the pandemic. Not everybody wants to run VMware in the data center. Some actually people say, hey, I want like a KVM based open source cloud solution. So they're leveraging OpenStack. So the beauty is that now there's an actual solutions that, how can I actually mix NTOS in hybrid mode with a an OpenStack cluster. So there's two ways around it. There's the NTOS on bare metal for on OpenStack, and there's also OpenStack as a cloud provider for Kubernetes. So it's kind of like the chicken and the egg, where it's like I'm gonna use a container engine to spin VMs on bare metal and then in it I'm gonna spin something else in containers. So it's a never-ending cycle of containers, but it's great. So you can actually leverage this solution, OpenStack, and not just VMware. So it's a great article. So I really encourage you to have a look at it. We're really in the investigation and what's going on. There's a lot of things on security. So there's investigating the usage of service accounts. And again, like that's why I like the meme is like, hey, well, who's using the Jenkins service account? Probably everybody is using that service account somewhere. We don't know why, but there's three ways of looking at this. There's the policy analyzer in terms of service account that gives you say, hey, well, this SA can do X, so maybe it's over permissive. There's policy intelligence. This is going to tell you the last time it was used, and well, there's cloud logging, which actually is the trace of like, hey, what is this service account that's done lately? Maybe it created something. Maybe it created a project that's been not linked to the organization for whatever reason, and something may happen. So again, in the trend of inventory visibility, seeing what's out there and who's doing what, leveraging those three services of like the policy analyzer, intelligence, and even cloud logging can actually get you a good idea of what's going on. And then, of course, then the idea is that, well, look, if you don't actually need that service account sometime as that darn JSON file that we need to have for some systems. But if you're actually able to leverage like auth token, then you remove that JSON file, and then yes, there's still a service account, but there's no JSON file with the actual information to log in it. So which is even better. Just going through all, I roughly have 10, so I'm going to be done in a few minutes. And that's just like one of the Pravanka's like wonderful drawings that she's doing. Is the introduction to Google Cloud Operations Suite. So basically, if you want an idea of like, hey, like regarding operation, what's out there in GCP, well, that gives you like a full-blown like 10,000 feet view of like what's going on. Yes, you have the operation piece. Then of course there's the monitoring, there's logging and alerting. You want if your code is in Google Source Repository, you want to leverage like Cloud Trace, Profiler, or Debugger. That's something that you can do in there. You have an entire suite of tools to help you, see what's going on and also act on special threat, like especially with the monitoring and alerting. If you reach certain threshold, maybe you want to notify someone, that maybe you want to actually trigger a cloud function that does something. So it's all the things that you can do in the operation suite. So again, you'll have the links that I'm going to paste in the chat. And actually, if I'm nice, I actually should just do that right now. Here you go. I'm going to just put it in the chat here. And it says it's too big, so I'm going to fix it after. So I'm just going to do it in two passes. No worries. So next one, cool one. Also, if you're leveraging GitHub Action and you're leveraging GCP, well, usually I was talking about that darn JSON file or something. Well, now GitHub Action actually supports OIDC, which is the like OpenID. And so you can leverage workload identity in GCP to create a trust. And if that trust is created through tokens and exchange, then you don't need that long-lived JSON service account file. It's a trust of services, and it's not just like service account and a token that can actually go somewhere, or somebody puts it in a bucket that's public. And anyway, you're not supposed to do that. So, great addition to GitHub Action that allows like better integration with GCP. So, great read again if you want to ditch the keys. Going on, our friend Gke Autopilot, so Google Kubernetes Engine Autopilot. So you have two modes now. The Autopilot one is really like it's fully managed. You don't really have to worry about the nodes or anything. So it's about the workloads and about and you're paying per node, but not just like for consumption. So as it shrinks or anything, you're paying for this. But you don't have to think about well the control plane that was already a thing, but also like the node pools and everything. You don't have to worry about those. But with this, that okay, well, it's nice, it's all managed, but maybe I'm losing a bit of flexibility if I want to integrate like third-party stuff. But actually, our friends at Google are working really closely with vendors to actually allow proper integration without like some ugly hack to make it work with a sidecar or anything. So people like Aqua, Circle CI, like Dynatrace, you name it, HashiCorp, they have proper integration with Autopilot, so it's done cleanly. It's not there's not like weird hacks. So again, the link with the article will be posted in the chat, and a good read. And that's like a segue to our friend David. So that was my marker slide. Say, hey man, you're almost done. Again, I'm not going to go in details in this, but the same way that Cloud Operation has that slide from Parenka just gives you an idea. It's like, hey, like what is CI/CD could look like in GCP. You can see all the bits and pieces in there. There's a piece there. I think I don't see Cloud Deploy in the mix, so that's the cool part that David's going to show also. But again, if you want to, it gives you a 10,000 feet view of like what are the components within GCP when we're talking CI/CD. So good read again there. So then I'll have the links, all the links, and I'm supposed to, I'll paste it directly. I've added two at the bottom there. There's two things I didn't want to cover, but there's the announcement of all the regions coming in 2022, which is great. And also a piece on the cloud architecture framework, which is now being transferred to the community. I mean, like the Google community. So it's just a transfer there, but it's a great place to actually have like all the reference architecture. Anything you want to do in GCP, you want to have a baseline diagram or everything that you're wondering, how should I set up something for IoT? You just go in there and then you have a reference architecture, which is a great way to start. So with all this being said, I'm gonna pass it on to David. So just let me know, David. I'm gonna put the slide there. If you want to intro yourself, then I'll stop sharing and then you can take over the sharing piece.
Perfect. Thanks, Stacey. Just to check, you can hear me okay?
Perfect.
Awesome. Bonjour à tous. Hi, everyone. David Sanders. I'm a customer engineer in Google Cloud, based in Waterloo, or Kitchener, Waterloo. I work in a sales role, but I'm very passionate about Google's serverless technology. You can tell I've been in technology for a long time. If you have any challenges at all with my Scottish accent today, do say. Don't be afraid to say. Ask me to repeat. Ask me to go more slowly. It gets worse after I have some amber looking liquid. But anyway, so my passion is serverless. For many years in technology, we've focused on the infrastructure. We've focused on building a platform that's enabled me to deliver software to production. And that's really my goal as an application developer. I've got four things that I think about. How often can I deliver software? How fast can I deliver software? When I deliver software, how often does it break? And when it breaks, how quickly can I fix it? Those are my four things that drive me as an application developer. And it aligns very well to Google's DORA research as well. Those are the four kind of key metrics that we all know and love. So continuous integration and continuous deployment are a key part of that. And Stacey, do you want to end the screen share and I'll start sharing my screen?
Yes, for sure. There you go. Stop sharing.
Yes,
It's all
sir.
yours.
Now there's going to be a little bit of feedback because the tab I'm about to share is on the same tab. So let me know when you can see this. So we spoke about really a goal as a developer is I want to deliver software, and I want to deliver it well, right? I want to focus on the software. So as a dev, I want to be able to build my software, run it through a Git source code management solution, and be able to have branches, pull requests, merge requests, and to really do everything I need to locally. So make sure my unit, my module is working, execute my unit tests, but then commit that branch, raise a PR or an MR, and when it's finished and approved, to have something built and to not really care about what's being built. But in this, what we're going to show today is I actually produce a container artifact that we publish to artifact registry. Anytime I merge to main or trunk, and just to answer the question just now, you'll see we had a question about, can I do PRs with Cloud Source Repositories? The answer is no, you can't. So with Cloud Build, which we'll come and touch on, we only support PRs, pull requests with GitHub and Bitbucket server. So with Cloud Source Repositories, our triggers are on a pushes to branches or tags. But anyway, in the demo I'm going to show, my app will be developed. When I push to main, I am going to kick off a build stage. I'm going to produce an artifact, and then I'm going to send a notification, a Cloud PubSub notification that says, hey, every time I make a change to main and build a new artifact, I will publish to the dev topic that I am ready for deployment to dev. And what I'm going to do then is use Cloud Build to actually, again, be triggered by that notification. And then I'm going to instigate Cloud Deploy, because my app is going to run on one of 4 environments. It's going to run on it's all Kubernetes. It's going to run on a dev environment, a test, a UAT, or a prod. Now, I said every time that I make a change in dev, I want to automatically release to dev. So I'm going to use Cloud Deploy to actually roll out to the dev environment. And I'm going to use a powdered or dry version of the manifests. I'm going to use effectively scaffold and customize underneath. And I'm going to hydrate the manifest so that when I render it for dev, I'm going to render it with the settings that are required for dev. And I will do that without any human intervention. At that point, my life cycle will stop, and I then wait to see what happens. And then someone, a human, or it could be automated, will do a looks good to me, and will then actually issue a promotion and say, I now want to promote from dev to test. Again, no human interaction at that point. We'll do the test rollout, we'll hydrate it, and we'll roll out to test. In UAT and production, slightly different. These are what we think of as secure environments. So I want to protect these environments. I'm going to put a gate in front of any deployments. Same process. I'm going to promote from test to UAT or UAT to prod, but I'm going to put an approval barrier in front that a manager actually has to need to approve before we actually roll out. So before I get started, I will pause and just, Stacey, if you can tell me if there's any questions on the chat, or if everything is good to go on.
Everybody's just like listening to every word you're saying. The Q&A is empty for now.
Okay, cool. I am going to use Cloud Source Repositories for my app. So this is my app. It's going to earn me significant amount of cash. I'm going to retire on this app because it's a guest book, and everybody needs a guest book. I'm going to have a browser, come into a front end, come into the Kubernetes cluster, to the pod, into the container, come to the backend service, come to the pod, and update a MongoDB database, and have the ability to accept guestbook entries. I'm going to be rich after this one. It's going to be famously good. So I have 3 clusters. I have a dev cluster, I have a test cluster, and I have a production cluster. To Stacey's point earlier, all 3 of these clusters are Gke Autopilot. So the fantastic thing is I'm paying nothing for these clusters. My bill right now is 0. I have no workloads running. So it's highly effective. In UAT and production, you'd probably use GKE standard, because one of the things you'll see as we roll out our application, it takes a little bit of time, maybe a minute, for GKE Autopilot to actually spin up the nodes that are running. But let's look at our application. So we can see in Cloud Build the history of our application, so our build history. So we can see what's been successful, what's not been successful, and we'll have a look at the code. And this is the code. Like I said, this is going to just blow the industry with my Golang-based guestbook. I can go into the template, make a change, and let's make a change in the code. And let's pretend that I've gone through the process, that I'm actually have gone through reviews. I'm going to commit, and I'm going to push it up to my origin. So I've now made a change to this application. It's controlled and it's been done properly. But what that's going to do is actually kick off a Cloud Build job. So now that I've made that change, if this was GitHub, I'd have done a PR request. With CSR, I'm just doing a push to main, but my build is underway. So I've done the code, and I can now start to build up my application's continuous integration. And while this is doing it, let's walk through quickly what this is doing. I'm doing an unshallow clone. I want to know certain things like the semantic version. So by default, Cloud Build will do a shallow clone. Well, I'm doing a fetch unshallow to get all of the Git history. I'm getting some cache. So every build that I do, I want to cache certain elements like my Golang compilation or any other elements that might be useful for me to cache. I'm going to automatically update my semantic version, right? So I can actually go in and say, okay, I've updated my version to 1.24.67, major, minor, build. I can go in there and conduct some unit tests. So I can actually force the unit test to be rerun. I can then conduct security and lint tests. So I'm actually checking the application for any sniffs or any bad behavior. Here, I am using open source tools for this. I'm using GoSec. I could be using SonarQube as well, or any other tool. I then build my front end and my back end to actually build executables. And then I use Canico to build a container image. So I'm using Canico. It's got a cache. I'm persisting my cache. And then I pull my images to Cloud Build so that I can then do some structure tests. If you haven't seen structure tests before, this is an open source project from Google around container structure tests. And I can check what's inside the produced container. Are there certain files? Certain files should not be there. Certain files should have this permission. There should be this metadata. And I can do that for my image. The last thing I do is actually use Cloud Build to send a pub sub notification. where I take some attributes and some data, wrap it up into a message, and publish it and say, hey, I just successfully built my application in this project. What then happens is Cloud Deploy will pick in. And in fact, let me just go and open Cloud Build in my deploy project. What happens is I have a trigger that has finished by the time we get there. That oh, I'm in the wrong piece. Hold on a second. I'll just change this to global rather than regional.
While you're there, David,
Yeah.
I just have FJF who just asked, like, can we download your build script somewhere?
I will share it. I will figure out a way to share it.
Cool, excellent, thanks.
Okay. So when I receive the PubSub notification, I trigger this build, and then I can extract all of the information that I shared, what the release was, what the source was, and then I haven't changed this for a while. It's now beta deploy, but I can use the Gcloud deploy command to actually create a new release. And I tell it the project, all the information that was passed in, the images that are going to be used, because when this actually happens, Cloud Deploy, and we should see if I go back to and just refresh the screen. In fact, it's passed, right? It's actually happened already. What we do is we define targets. So within our pipeline, we define our target clusters: dev, test, prod. And then when we're ready to release to one of those, we actually create a release. And here's the release that was automatically created for me by my Cloud Build job. And this release gives me all the release details, the metadata, the rendering I'm going to talk about in a second, timing, but also the metadata. So the annotations and metadata that I passed through previously, blame. This was me, right? It was my fault. My build ID, my Git log. So what the Git commit message was, the release that I'm on, a link to my repo, so I can actually go and see the source code, and then a view of its state. So here I can tell that we rendered okay and we deployed okay. So if we actually, before I go into any of those features, let me show you the cluster. So this is my dev cluster. I'm going to refresh. I'm up and running. My workload has been deployed. Notice I have one backend pod, one front end, one MongoDB. Let me go to the service, and we'll open this up. Like I say, this is going to blow the industry away. Okay, and my French is still learning, but
You were able to put that A in
graph,
French with your English
indeed, the
keyboard. So
graph.
I'm
Hey,
wow, man, that's awesome.
you should see my English. It gets even better. Um, my Scottish. So I've deployed this release to dev, and I've hydrated it. So for dev, I know that I only want 512 megabytes of RAM, and I only want 250 milliseconds of CPU. So where did I get that from? If we actually go back to the code, you'll see that it's customized, right? So in customize, I have my base configuration, so my front end deployment. I tell it the replicas, I give it all of my selectors, I want the containers, my ports that I'm using, my nvars, etc. And then I use customize to say, hey, for dev, give me a strategic merge so that I can change things. So for dev, I only want 512 MB. For CPU, I only want 250. For test, I want 756 MB, and I want half a second of CPU cycle. So I can actually use customize to customize my environments. So what's happening here is when Cloud Deploy runs, in the background, Cloud Deploy uses Cloud Build as well. So again, serverless, but it uses a regional build in US Central 1 or wherever you specify. And it basically does a scaffold render. So it's at this point, it's rendering the manifests. A question that may come up is, do we support Helm? We support Helm for rendering manifests, but we don't support Helm for deploying currently. So you can use Helm to render your manifests, but we don't use it for deploying. So when we submit that deployment job, it actually renders the templates, and then it does the actual deployment to Kubernetes, which is how we ended up with 3 workloads here. So now let's imagine we've gone through this, we've checked our application, it works really well, it looks really good, and we're ready to move it to test. Now here, there's absolutely nothing running in the test cluster. So let's go back to Cloud Deploy. What we're going to do is look at the pipeline for our application, and we can tell that the last version we rolled out to test was 124.65, and we can actually go further and look at the full details of it and figure out what it was. But our latest version is 124.67, and then I put a timestamp on the end so that I can have uniqueness. But now if I want to take this application and move it from dev to test, I hit promote. I can see any approvals that are required. I can give it a release name. And this is one of the best things I can do. I can actually look at the difference between the 2 releases. So in this case, not a lot because my manifest didn't actually change, but my build tag changed, right? But if I had changed other things within my release, they would all be shown here to actually let me see exactly what was happening in my environment, exactly what I was about to do in this move from dev to test. So let's hit promote, and you'll see that our rollout is actually in progress. So if I go back to Gke, and I'll just refresh a few times until this starts to come up. Let's just see if we have. We're in progress. Let's go back, see if it's there yet. Yeah, it is, right? And because I'm using Gke Autopilot, what happens is I don't have workloads sitting ready and waiting. So Autopilot is spinning up nodes in the background. If I actually did, let me just SSH into my box, and I'm going to do a kubectx. I'm in dev, so let's just do a Q. I need to do test. Let me just move. That's prod. Let's do test. QCTL nodes. By the time I do this, they'll all have been, they're spinning up, right? So Autopilot is actually spinning those up in the background. So in a moment or so, they will be released. Now, because this is scaffold, one of the things I can do, and one of the things I want to do and I can automate this as well, but here I'm going to do it by hand. Because this is scaffold, assuming I have the rights and I've got the control, I can use the scaffold command line. So I can delete, and I can delete the profile dev, because we set up profiles for Cloud Deploy. So I'm going to hit scaffold delete p-dev, and my application is now being removed from dev. I can actually set Cloud Deploy up so that it does that automatically for me. So again, remember I'm on autopilot and I hate spending money, my Scottish heritage. So I want to remove that workload as soon as I've successfully promoted it to test, which I have now. So let's just have a little look. Yeah, you can see I'm 12467 test running in test. Brand new database, so there's no messages there. Let's have a look at a couple of things. So my hydration is different because you can see I'm actually running 3 of 3 pods, right? So I actually requested 3 pods. If I look at the application again, you'll see that my memory is 756 megabytes and half or 500 milliseconds of CPU time. Just exactly what you'd expect. And my app is up and running. So let's just close this. So now we've gone through this process. The other thing I can do is I can, with Cloud Deploy, tell it that at the end of this deployment, a notification is published to PubSub. So once test has been rolled out, I could actually kick off another cloud build job in my, and this would be in my global, not in my regional, because it would be my job, to actually go and execute my tests automatically, to go and auto test my test environment, conduct those tests, and then I'm going to use human power, but I could equally use that cloud build job, and I can say, hey, test looks really good. So I can see now that we're on the same version between dev and test, and I can promote this to production. So a slightly different approach here. I'm going to do my promotion, same as always. I can see my manifest difference. Again, it's the tags that have changed. But when I hit promote, I don't have permission to actually promote. So it now goes into a review queue. So let's imagine I'm now Stacy. Stacy is the manager. He signs into the console. He then performs the review. So he then goes in and looks at the review and says, oh, okay, I can see what's happening. I can see the manifest. I can see the difference. Awesome. He doesn't have to understand Kubernetes. He doesn't have to understand GKE or the approach. He does understand how to look at diffs and see what's changed and to figure out. And then Stacy hits approve. And now if we go back to the pipeline, you can see my rollout is in progress. So let's go to production. Let's refresh GKE, and we're spinning up. One thing I'll point out just while we're waiting for that to spin up, notice how I'm using customize to give me a different prefix per environment. So again, I'll show you some of that in a second at the code level. In production, I choose to have no prefix. So in my production environment, it's different. Notice I'm spinning 5 pods up for production. Still 1 for the back end, still 1 for MongoDB, but this time I'm hydrating 5 pods for the front end. So while that is spinning up the nodes, let's go and do 2 things. Let us kubectx and then go to test because we think it's going to be cool. And this time I am going to delete the test profile. Right, so I'm going to say scaffold delete -p test. And again, I could automate that. I could do that automatically, but here I'm doing it by hand to show you what's happening. Because what's actually happening is Cloud Deploy is using scaffold and customize under the cover. The secret sauce, if you will, is how it's all brought together and to work together. And that's where we use Cloud Build and we use jobs in the background. So let's have a look at what this actually looks like. So within my scaffold manifest, it's really, really simple. I am saying 3 profiles: dev, test, and prod. Each of those profiles for deployment, you notice I don't have any build in because I assume that my CI is going to conduct that build, not me as a local dev. But for cloud deploy, I'm saying there's 3 paths, 3 environments: dev, test, and prod. And here's the paths, right? So we have our base manifest definitions, and then we have each of our paths: dev, prod, and test. We can customize these as we see fit. So in my customization YAML, I've got a strategic merge. I want to merge these 4 files with whatever is included in the base. I want to just do a quick point. Stacey, am I good for time?
Yeah, we're at 12. It's 12:46. So we still have sometimes on my end there's just a wrap up and doing things. So you're good. So when your app is back, I'm just curious to see if you're gonna see Milad's question that I posted in your guest book.
Okay, I will go there now. Did you post it in the prod or the test? Because I just blew.
Oh yeah, it was 111.46. So which one of that was there?
Because in the test environment, I just deleted it, I thought, or maybe I didn't. Yeah, I did.
Okay, well, no worries. So, well, basically, while we're doing this, Milad was asking, like, what is the best practice if we want to roll back our build, which we made like a month ago, rebuilding by history/commit ID, or download a copy of our function in a bucket? Like, how would you perform?
And I'm going to show you that one in just a moment because
Awesome.
it's a great question. There's multiple answers, but it's a great question. So here we can see how we customize, but how do we actually tell Cloud Deploy what to do? So I'm just going to open up my demo, and I am going to show you what profiles look like. And so again, YAML manifest, because everybody loves a YAML manifest. And we define our pipeline for an application really simply. We have a beta delivery pipeline. We give it a name, and we tell it the stages that it can go through: dev, test, and prod. And those map to targets that we actually define. So within our guest book, dev cluster or target, we define name, description, does it require approval, true or false, and then the cluster that we're actually going to use and access. Same for prod, same for test. You'll notice in prod, I say that it requires approval, and there's a full spec for that. And then I'll cover that one later, maybe. So on our pipeline, it's really simple. It is, these are the steps that I want to go through. These are the targets that I'm going to apply. Then everything is based on, everything is based on your scaffold manifest and your customize base and your profiles. So dev, prod, and test. So that's how we do it. That's how we actually make the magic work. So now let's go back to Kubernetes. Our pods are up and running. We have 5. Let's just go to the services and we'll go there. And we're 124.67 prod running in production. Gigabyte of RAM and a full CPU cycle. Just going to post. Awesome. So to Milarad's question, I'm going to pick on Archie now. So Archie is one of our top execs, and he likes to shout at me and make me do things. And he comes in and he says, 124.67, I got a major problem with. I need you to go back a month ago, right? Now, okay, let's imagine that the data is persisted separately from this. It's not part of the deployment. I'm only including MongoDB in for simplicity. But let's suppose we're at the app level. So now I can go back to Cloud Deploy, and I can actually look at all of the releases that I've made. So if I look at my releases, I can go through my history of saying, okay, so there was my major and my minor and the build number. Actually, we want to go back until, let's go back to 123.50, which was November the 18th. Archie says, that's a very good idea. So now I'm going to promote this release. So I'm going to take this release that was the 18th of November, and I could put it through the full life cycle again. I could send it to dev first, then test, then prod. But Archie says, no, here's your Jira ticket. Here is your audit trail that I've demanded you go straight to prod. So being a great developer I am, I accept a Jira card and an audit trail. I show all the differences between what is in production now and what was in place on the 18th of November, and I hit promote. Now again, there's a review to this. I don't just have permission to review it. So again, let's now pretend I'm Stacy. Stacy comes in, signs in, goes for review.
I give a +1 for this one. You can merge it.
Thank you. Stacy comes in, goes to the review, looks at the difference, and says, yeah, I'm good. I'm going to approve it. Now, the manifests have already been rendered. We've got them stored. So let's go back to our Kubernetes cluster in production, and we will see eventually that we start rolling out to our workload. So we can see the rollout is in progress. We can see, let me just view the rollout, 123.50. So if I go back to my cluster and do a refresh, as you'd expect, my replicas are being terminated and replaced, right? So I'm scheduling my 123 version, and it's going to be replacing 124.60, whatever it was. Now, the question is it a good practice or not? And it is. It's an acceptable practice. It's a very, very good way of accelerating your time to fix. When something goes wrong and when things have gone really squiffy and you need to fix something quick, it can be a very, very good way of being able to reduce that time to fix a problem, right? To fix something that's broken. The other approach is you could create a new release. New releases tend to be when you have more time, and it's not a Archie coming in and saying, you got to do this, we've got to get back, we've got to be able to take sales now, or we've got to be able to do this or that. And I've now, everything's green again, right? So my replicas have been outdated. Let's browse to the site. And I can't get my fingers to work, but you can see I'm now running 123 prod, right? So I know exactly which release I'm running. And now we can go and fix it, and we can go through that process all over again, that life cycle. And at this point, that was really everything that I wanted to cover and really open up to questions. It's a whirlwind tour. There's a lot to discover, but it's a fantastic product. A couple of things I'll call out. We only support GKE with Cloud Deploy at the moment. Cloud Run will be on the roadmap, but right now, GKE. We only support Scaffold and Scaffold customized for deploying. So we support Helm to render a template, a manifest, but we don't support Helm deployment. So you can't say, take this Helm chart and go and deploy it. We actually use the Helm chart to render the templates. And that's it. It gives a really good serverless approach where I can have serverless continuous integration, serverless continuous deployment, and effectively serverless GKE by using Autopilot. And I will pause for questions the last 5 minutes. I'll stop sharing my screens now so I can.
Yeah, and I'll start my video again. So far, it's still quiet. Well, there's Archie who's asking question around. Oh, Cloud Run is in private preview, so he's trying to sell it. It's like go on board. So, but I actually one question because on the cloud deploy piece, like how like the ramp up for somebody who wants to start leveraging cloud deploy, like writing those templates. Is that, I mean, like if you do cloud build, it's like it's pretty straightforward. You work with steps, it's YAML, you do your thing. So when it comes to scaffold in terms of complexity to actually get to what you've shown us, is that something that, you know, of course you need to invest time, but
you do, but the journey, I mean, like to kind of merge this into Archie's question as well. I always found Spinnaker a lot of hard work. Right? I know Spinnaker is really good, but I found it a lot of hard work. Right, so I like simple things. I like the least amount of pressure. My background, I spent many years as a consultant, many years as a sales engineer, and then became a DevOps director. Did that for about 5 years before coming back to Google. I like simplicity. So I like to be able to have known provable elements. So for me, I like Scaffold because yes, it takes a little bit of time, but then I get to learn Scaffold and I can do that as a small chunk. Then I can learn to mix Scaffold and customize, again, a small chunk that I can actually start to take advantage of. Then I can learn Cloud Deploy, and because Cloud Deploy is basically doing Scaffold render dash image and replacing the images. So once I know that, once I know how to use Scaffold, once I know how to use customize, then the building of the Cloud Deploy manifest is really easy. And our documentation is very good. Our product team have done a really good job making the documentation easy to follow. And it's definitely worth playing with, right? The best thing I like, and let me share my screen again just very quickly, is the fact that because it's Scaffold, right? I'm going to go to my production cluster now because I don't like spending money. So X, I do it, and then I am just gonna prod, and I'm done. It's doing its thing. It's just removing everything that I need to remove. So if nothing else, learning Scaffold is really good because it makes life easy. It's an alternative to Helm. Helm I like, but I find Helm very verbose, a lot of effort, especially when I'm trying to manage Helm templates. Customize starts to give me the ability. I guarantee if you don't know Customize, one of the first things that will frustrate you is you want to inject environment variables. I'm not going to spoil the surprise and the excitement. Everybody can discover that themselves. But then you can move forward into Cloud Deploy. You can use it manually. So I would, if you want to do some reading, Scaffold and Customize, and then Cloud Deploy.
Cool. Awesome. I see something in the Q&A. Archie's asking questions. So, would it be possible to leverage GitLab or Jenkins or any other CI tool with Cloud Deploy?
Yeah. So all your, I mean, so again, what I'm doing, I'm using Cloud Build. The benefit for me of using Cloud Build is my Cloud Build executes with a service account. So then I can give a restricted amount of capability to that service account, and then it can do the Gcloud deploy. You can do the Gcloud deploy from Jenkins or GitLab or from anything else. I believe there's also a GitHub action. But again, the challenge is how much are you, if you're able to use GitHub actions, use the OIDC, I'm not having to spread JSON files around everywhere with credentials. That would be my only issue, but you could certainly have it. And imagine you had something like, let's take a weird example, Bitbucket server, one of my old favorites. If I've got Bitbucket server, I've got the secret stored for my service account. I'm able to call out and then just do a Gcloud or even an API call if I needed to. So yeah, I can use any CI tool. And actually our documentation talks about how to use not just Cloud Build, but Jenkins or GitLab or GitHub or anything.
Cool. Excellent. Well, we're almost on time. Also, just one good thing, also leveraging Cloud Deploy, it's fully managed versus, you know, stuff like Spinnaker, where yes, you can probably find a manage somewhere, but if you have to do it yourself, there's a bit of operational overhead. So I'm lazy, so if I can get something managed, I'm happy. So
I agree. And there's one thing that I didn't show you today that is coming soon, is we have some beautiful metrics that will be shown around frequency, around error rates, about how often, how quickly, how much you had to roll that back. Those metrics will give you, again, if you think about it from an operational perspective, a view of how well your apps are moving through their life cycle. So I'd highly recommend it.
cool. Well,
Hey,
David, that
Stacey,
was really awesome.
cool.
that was really awesome. So we're just wrapping up quickly. Usually, like we go up to like 105. We're at 102, so that's not that bad. So yeah, so just a quick wrap up. You know, if of course, like this is the last event, so everybody who attended, like happy holidays. Enjoy it. Be safe. And you know, we'll see what 2022 is gonna bring us, and maybe it's gonna bring us an in real life event. We don't know. Crossing fingers, all fingers crossed, toes, hands, ears, whatever, whatever works. Of course, if you have time, people, I put the link in the chat. There's a QR code too. It's a little survey, you know, so that David's boss Archie can actually tell if he did a good job. I'll give you 2 thumbs up. That was really great. Always love seeing things actually running in real life, real demos. Wish you all the best with your guest book. I don't know if you're gonna retire on that one, but hey,
I don't
never
think
know.
so. You never know. Maybe guest boot plus.
Okay, cool. Excellent. So again, thanks everybody. Thanks for joining. Enjoy the rest of the week, enjoy the rest of the year, and we'll see you back in 2022. So
Cheers, everyone.
thank you.
Bye.
Bye bye.